Prime Minister, thank you so much for your time. It's been an incredibly difficult and destructive year in the region, and you have been personally yourself at the center of trying to broker some kind of negotiation ceasefire between the warring sides, Israel, Hamas. Can you just let us know where those talks are at now, and are you any closer to reaching some kind of agreement or deal before the new Trump administration arrives in January?
Well, thank you very much, Yalda, for this opportunity. As you described, the region has been through a turmoil, unfortunately, in the last 14 months. And we've seen this destructive war in Gaza that started, of course, with 7th of October events. And I believe that what we are going through today in the region is one of the most destructive eras that we've been through in the recent history. And what we have seen in Gaza and Lebanon, and now it's expanding to Syria, is just something that we hope that it stops, but we are worried about the consequences of that post the conflict. Qatar, since day one, took the position to hope to prevent that escalation from expanding and trying to find a solution to bring back the hostages to home and find a solution for Gaza and for the situation in Gaza. Unfortunately, this worked out in November when we managed to release 109 hostages in exchange of 250 Palestinian prisoners, but this didn't hold up. We are hopeful. We see now some momentums and some statements. I don't want to talk about it much, Yalda, because, and I hope that also, the public understands this, because there was a lot that's been in the public domain about these negotiations. And this did nothing for the negotiation but undermining it throughout the process. And we hope that we can, in this time, we can make as much as possible private and make some progress, and then we hopefully bring some good news for the public. And I want just to say, I'm really hopeful. That's what I have.
Antony Blinken, the outgoing US Secretary of State, in an interview a few months ago said to me, we're 90% there. I said to him, why can't you put more pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu? And he said, what can we do? We can only advise and tell them. We can't force them. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, we've been working very closely with the US, and we have seen in moments where pressure was needed, and it's been also demonstrated and exercised. I mean, it's on both of us, this burden, whether it's us, Egypt, or the US on the other hand, to pressure the parties. But there are limits also to the expectations of the pressure. It affects us dramatically as a state, being a convening power, a negotiating power, because with the time it will affect our credibility that we have. It took us years to build in this world of mediation. And sometimes, from the outside, people doesn't see the complications of what's happening in those negotiating rooms. But I hope that us and the US and everyone will do our maximum pressure in order to achieve the deal.
You said at times it impacted the credibility of Qatar. I mean, there were critics in Israel saying, why are they keeping Hamas in their country? Can you respond to that and talk about why Hamas remains in Qatar?
Hamas' presence in Doha happened with full transparency and coordination and at the request of the US and Israel at that time, to have this to be used as a negotiation platform. And that's been the purpose for this political office throughout the year. Since the war in 2014 until 7th of October, there are plenty of ceasefires that's been brokered through that office. There are tons of situations where we have prevented an escalation from the beginning in order not to put ourselves in a situation like what we ended up with in 7th of October. All the support that we've been doing into Gaza has been done in full transparency in full coordination, whether it's with the US, with Israel, or with the United Nations. There will be a lot of criticism, a lot of parties who will not like this kind of policy, yes, but it's needed. It's required for our region. People who are in our region, they understand why Qatar is taking such a position. And what we are hoping actually from the rest of the world, just to understand, 109 hostages who've been returned to their families, they returned through that office, through this channel of negotiation. It wasn't returned by a military power.
The Emir, who's currently here in the UK on a state visit, has made it clear on a number of occasions that he views what's happening in Gaza as genocide. Can you confirm, is this the official position of the state of Qatar? What you're seeing in Gaza is, in your view, genocide?
It is actually what's happening in Gaza. We never expected that the world will stay silent on what's happening in this way. And honestly, it's been very disappointing and very frustrating for us, not only for Qatar, but for the entire region and for a wider population around the world.
Incoming President Donald Trump recently put out a statement, I think it was on Truth Social or on X. He said, if the hostages are not returned, all hell will break loose. There will be hell to pay. What do you think he means by that? And do you think with his arrival, the situation is likely to get worse for the Palestinian people and the region?
Well, actually, we are in touch with the incoming administration and with the President Trump advisors, and we are trying to coordinate with them our efforts. And all of us, we agree, and we are hoping to get over the situation before the president comes to the office, because we have priorities to stabilize the situation in Gaza. We have priorities in order to restore regional security. And such a statement is expected, and we hope that it will work and it will be delivered to both parties in the same manner, that this situation needs to end.
So he's made it clear in the conversations that you have had with him and his team, he wants this resolved by inauguration.
Yes.
He's made that clear.
We had heard this from his team, at least as I recall the conversations that I had and I engaged with them, that they want this to be resolved now, today even.
So are your teams now working to try and make that happen?
We are trying our best. We've been doing our utmost. As I mentioned to you, I don't want to speak much details. I'm trying to protect this process as much as possible. And I hope it doesn't get leaked, from one party or another. But it's really unfortunate to see all this bloodshed happening and all these risks that's even the hostages being exposed to, and the leaks and all these kind of news on the public domain does not benefit anything but just to score some points, some political points for one party or another.
On Iran, we've seen Iran weakened. What advice would you give to Donald Trump on the art of the deal when it comes to dealing with Iran?
Well, I think it's not about weakening or strengthening. I think, at the end of the day, the situation with Iran needs to be resolved through negotiation. What we have seen also from our engagement with the president of Iran, the current president, the current foreign minister, they've been very positively open to engage in a good faith and to engage constructively with whether it's President Trump or even with the current administration in the US. I think there is a lot of risks in the coming period, but there are plenty of opportunities, and I hope that everyone sees these opportunities.
As we said, you're here on a state visit. The Emir is here. You yourself have met with Keir Starmer as well. How would you place the current relationship with the UK? And you've also spoken about the fact that Europe, the UK, the United States does need to step up when it comes to the conflict in Gaza, for example, and other regional issues.
Well, we are really glad to see this state visit as a celebration of a relationship between two countries where loyalty became in short supplies in the world, unfortunately. And we've seen this partnership between the UK and Qatar in the past decade has been progressing and being taken to another level. And it's not really a partnership in a single area, but it's a multi-dimensional when we look at it from a defense perspective, the joint squadron that Qatar and the UK have, and this has never happened, for example, for the UK since World War II. And Qatar to be the country that has such an arrangement with the UK is just a demonstration for how strong is the trust between the two countries.
Prime Minister, human rights activists have also tried to put pressure on the Prime Minister to discuss with Qatar its human rights records. What would you say to them?
Well, you know, it's unfortunate sometimes when we see all this criticism in human rights, or what's so-called human rights records in Qatar. We are not saying that we are a perfect nation or a perfect country, but we are a country that when we see there is something wrong, we acknowledge the facts that these are wrong things, and we are trying to do our best according to our systems and our customs to modify it and to reform it. But I have really, you know, my biggest question is that we see the NGOs very loud about human rights records in a stable country like Qatar, that's the majority of the people are living happily, and the government that dedicates itself to serve the country and the public, while ignoring the facts that what's happening, for example, in Gaza, is not even mentioned in their reports. This is just showing a double standards, and I hope that for them, when they are talking about human rights, they see human beings as equals, not you know, just distinguishing between this country or that country.
On Gaza, are you optimistic that in the next few weeks we may reach a deal? I know you say you want to protect the deal and don't want to speak too soon, but could we see something? You've said that President Trump wants to see something by January 20.
Look, Yalda, every day, every morning I wake up not feeling optimistic, I will get depressed. I'm always optimistic, but I hope this time we can get a break.
Because we've seen a number of times, you know, as we said, Antony Blinken, President Biden have said 90% there.
You never get from me like a full optimism. So
are we talking more than 90% this time though?
I hope so.
Prime Minister, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.